LPC, LPCC, IMFT, LISW, PhD. If you don't know what any of those are, go ahead and hit the 30-second fast forward button and enjoy the podcast. But if you know someone or happen to have those credentials, then Emerge might be your next career path. If you're seeking to join a team that provides authentic Christian counseling and utilizes advanced modalities, then apply today at emerge.org/careers and join us in the battle to help people find freedom and rest.
Welcome to the XM Podcast. Here is your host, mental health therapist, Matthew Kanabe.
I am very hard on myself, dealt with severe anxiety.
And it made me feel like a monster. I didn't have the energy to care.
There was just nothing more but to face what I had been running from.
I'm already an anxiety-filled mess.
It's just love. Like, it just goes back to love.
Well, the world is currently experiencing many significant events, with various pressing topics emerging from every angle. Among these, the ongoing discourse regarding the political climate in America stands out prominently. Today's podcast does not advocate for a specific candidate, nor does it imply that any individual is right or wrong. Rather, it seeks to explore the considerations that Christians and those who care for others should contemplate in the coming weeks as we prepare to enter the voting booths. To assist in this discussion, I am joined by an esteemed leader from River Valley Church in Minnesota, a valued friend of Emerge, a published author, a prolific speaker. Please join me in welcoming to the show, Pastor Rob Ketterling.
It's great to be here. I am doing really well. I was, when you said, I want to introduce our guest, I could hear the fake studio clapping in the background. Like, yeah,
I'll get that in post. I'll get that. I'll put that.
Oh, no, it's great to be with you. And anytime we get to spend time with you, we're excited. My wife was just, people don't know this, but she was just in the room saying, hi, good to see you. And, so glad that we get to do this.
Well, I appreciate it. I was in a 4.5-hour board meeting yesterday, and your wife was so kind. She sits on the board of Emerge and was part of that experience. So it was good to see her again today. And Rob, just share a little bit about what's going on, what's happening at River Valley Church. What have you guys been up to? Let's get an update for our audience.
Yeah, for those that don't know, it's a church we started almost 30 years ago, 29 years ago. It's hard to believe that next year we are 30th anniversary.
So you started
13 people in a Bible.
You started when you were 8?
Yeah, 29 years old.
Wow.
And it's hard to believe that we did that. And now here we are with 8,000-9,000 on a weekend, 20,000 at Easter. The church is multi-site. We love missions. We gave away over $10 million to help missionaries around the world. And that's not like outreach in our neighborhood. That's like missions around the world. Our heart is global at River Valley, we say. And so the church is doing well and strong and generous. And then on top of that, we're trying to figure out how to function in I don't want to say post-Christian, but in a negative world. At least our reality in Minnesota, where we live, it feels like we're pastoring a church in a state and a culture that doesn't care about God that much. And so we're trying to wake them up to God and be a church that's alive and vibrant and let them know they'd miss us if we were gone, and let them know we have the answer in Jesus Christ. So it's a challenging time, but it's an exciting time.
In our last conversation, we were actually recording in Orlando. We were at General Council. I think that was 2021. I think it was 2021 or maybe 2022. Yeah. Something like that.
It had to be an odd year. So it was,
it was 21. And, a lot of the conversation was around, you guys were in the thick of it. I mean, it's been a major event going on in the States, but for you guys and where your church's, main campus is located, you guys have been through a lot and experienced a lot. And that's kind of leading us into the conversation today. But talk just a little bit about the last 4 years, pastoring in Minneapolis.
Yeah. I mean, prior to all the COVID, prior to all the things that happened here and George Floyd being killed on our streets, I mean, all that happened, Minneapolis was like this perfect little place to be. Minnesota, we used to brag like we're the best of the second tier cities in America. We're not Dallas and we're not New York, but we're the best.
Yeah.
And it just feels like the state and the city, and there's just kind of a hurt that's here. And our restrictions were pretty severe. We learned the value of our governor. We learned the value of a mayor, city councils. Everybody thought like most of them were figureheads. And then during this, we realized they had real power. And it was like, wait, we better take a look at who's elected. So it was a very restrictive time. And then, of course, the turmoil and the rioting and the tragic situation that unfolded with George Floyd getting killed on our street. I mean, that was just terrible. That was terrible. And it brought a lot of pain. It brought a lot of how did this happen? Why here? What's going on? And so I think we're not like still living in it, but we're living in the residual effects of it, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. And so we still could use your prayers and a lot of things that we are facing. I'm trying just to state the facts. All right. I'm just stating the facts, but Governor Walz is now Vice President candidate Walz. And so a lot of the things we experience, the nation is starting to see like, oh, you had that and he said that, and you're a transgender refuge state and you're this, and, and they're discovering what was there. And I got a lot more vocal in standing up for values than traditionally I would have done. But we were like all eyes on Minnesota.
Yeah. It seems too, with what is going on, the eyes are still there. That's not changing over these next couple of weeks. And I want to get into our topic, but I know you won't bring this up, but I want to bring it up. You're releasing a new book, and I want to get to it before we get on to the train that we're going to get into on our topic. So talk to me about The Generous Life, and where can people get it? Give us a snapshot of what we're getting into with the new book. Yeah.
So for those that don't know, our church has been on an incredible just adventure of generosity. That's the way I would say it. From our very first offering, we gave it all to missions, and then we realized, wait, we've got to keep some to pay the bills. And how are we going to do this? And I've learned so many lessons about generosity. And everybody kept saying, put it in a book. I didn't do it. They said, will you teach it as a class? And we do these generosity accelerators. And my goal is to train 10,000 pastors to do this. And if I train 10,000 pastors, I believe their giving at their church will increase overall. Like if you added up 10,000 of them, I believe the impact would be $1 billion annually that would come into the church that could go to causes around the world, in the neighborhoods, in future generations. And so I'm doing these training sessions, and then somebody said, put it in a book. So I finally put it in a book, and it's called The Generous Life. Giving meaning to your money is like the tagline. And it's how to live generous, like how to live on purpose for God. And so many people think like, I've got to quit my job and become a pastor to do something for the King. No, you don't. God has you right where he wants you. And some people are in a way to make great resources. Others have the skill set to get them into places that churches couldn't go. And we just thank God for this generous life. And like I say, we gave away over $10 million over our paying our bills. We gave away. And when I tell people that, there's stuff like, no, you brought in 10 million. I'm like, no, we gave away 10 million. And so, and Emerge is one of those charities and ministries we believe in, and we annually give you guys part of that too. And so that adventure has been so incredible. I couldn't keep it to myself.
Yeah. And
I know I'm going to get blasted, because anytime you write a book about money and generosity, people attack everything about it. Right. And I'm just like, I'm not even saying it's for us. It's God brings it to you to get it through you. And I pray that people will see that it's about living a generous life, not about a me-focused life, but about his kingdom-focused life. And They can get it on Amazon. They can do bulk orders, getting in touch with us at River Valley. The church has been so gracious. They actually published the book, and so they'll make part of the profits on it, and I'll be able to give generously from it. So yeah, it's exciting.
It is exciting. And this is your seventh book, something like that.
I should know that, but I think it's my seventh.
I think it's your seventh. Yeah. Because when I was doing some background research, I was like, this is because I saw that it recently came out. I'm like, this is not his first book. And I want to let people know, being on the leadership team at Emerge, what Pastor Rob is saying is he puts his money where his mouth is. I mean, the amount of support you've given us over the years, and the not only financially, but just the way that you have championed our ministry and shared it with other pastors, churches, ministries, it's just incredible. And we think the world of you and your wife and what you guys have done. And you've been such a support of us that we love supporting you. And I know that we've had a wonderful relationship for a long time, and just want to let people know when you're talking about giving generously, we know that 100% is true. And,
Thank you.
That's really important. And we're grateful for the relationship we have with you guys in River Valley. And so let's get into it. Apparently we're about 2 weeks away from one of the biggest elections that we've done that I'm aware of in my 40 some years on this planet. So the point of this conversation, I want to give a shout out to your son, Logan, who does a tremendous podcast that I listen to all the time called Talking Church. And I am cherry picking. That's exactly what I'm doing. But I think this is how the church can work together. And I heard him host a podcast with, I think it was you, Samuel Rodriguez, and Alan Tennyson, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Wanted to make sure I gave credit. And our president, Dr. Crosby, sent me the podcast, and I listened to it. I'm like, oh man, everybody needs to hear this because it's so timely and it's so important. And so I reached out to you and I was like, hey, can we just repeat that on the XM podcast? And here's the topic, and I'll let you go. As Christians, I think that this is a very critical time. Not that any election isn't, but we're getting each election that we seem to go to more and more pulled into this political climate. So I just wanted to have the conversation with you as Christians. What do we do during this time? So long-winded answer or long-winded conversation get to what do we do as Christians, and give us some guidance.
Wow, that's such an open-ended thing. Like, I'm like, all right, here's what you should do. But no, here's what I've been challenging our church to do. First of all, take it serious that we get to vote. I've been to 57 countries, and you get to see a lot. I've been to Cuba. I've been to Russia. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I'm well-traveled, and it's all different types of countries, China. And I've seen this. We have a privilege. We have a privilege in America to vote, and we have this opportunity to do this. And I think we shouldn't take it lightly, and we should vote. And people say, would Jesus vote? He didn't have an opportunity. It was Rome, and there wasn't the ability to do that. And so even when we look in the Bible, we say, well, what did the people in the Bible do? They weren't allowed to vote. I mean, really the only vote, if you think about it, the children of Israel voted for a king, and God said, you don't want to vote for a king. And they're like, yes, we do. And he's like, he'll oppress you. He will tax you. He will take your children. And they're like, we still want him. I mean, how crazy is that? The only vote, bad vote.
Right.
So we get the privilege to vote. And I say that we should. And we have the right, like people say, well, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. You get to vote for the school board that makes the decision on the curriculum and the way your kids are taught. You get to vote on the community leaders that decide zoning, and do they want more churches or less churches. You get to vote on the mayor and the governor, and then you go up to your state and your house, and then the president. So and really, when you're voting at a national level, you're voting for policies and platforms more than personalities. And I don't know when it happened, probably with the invention of TV, we stopped in electing like just strong leaders and cultural heroes, if you will. If you think in the past, we elected like military generals and high level people, and then all of a sudden it became TV. We wanted a personality. We wanted a person that looked good or made us feel good. And it became less about decision making and about emotion and about image. And so we now have personalities instead. We focus on the personalities instead of the platforms. And I think we need to look at the platforms that we're voting for and take it as a privilege. Now, some people would say, like, voting is bad. It doesn't matter. It's Babylon. And the devil says he has the power on earth and we shouldn't be involved in it. And first of all, you're believing that the devil told the truth when he said that, which we can debate. Is he the father of lies and he really doesn't have all power? But okay, so and secondly, like, just because we're in it doesn't mean we're not supposed to be involved. Salt and light is a preserving agent. Salt is a preserving agent to keep things from rotting, and light brings the truth to the situation. We get to be involved. I mean, and if Jesus even said pay taxes because that's what your government is asking you to do, well, our government is asking us to vote. So I tell our church, first of all, vote, vote, vote. I think they said 32 million Christians won't vote. And it just saddens me to think, if we all got together, like, Jesus is not on the ballot, but we could probably elect a really good person if we all got involved.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts around sharing with Christians the how do we address those that have so differing of opinions? Like right now, I feel like so much of America, and even in the church, there's so many polarizing topics that are happening, and it's causing a divide. I'm sure you've seen that. I mean, it's like, there's such a massive divide. I recently heard a comedian from South Africa say, he goes, man, the political climate in America, it's like sports. It's like you're either on one team or the other, and you guys can't seem to, coexist with, differing political beliefs. And it's like you're diametrically opposed to each other. So I can imagine pastoring the church that you have, the size you have, you're going to have a lot of people with differing opinions. So how do we navigate that? Because that's such a huge issue. So,
yeah, after the pandemic, I noticed that a lot of churches became more similar in beliefs. Like, let's say you had a wide spectrum of people attending your church, but the pandemic forced people to take a choice, like this or this, this or this. And with the this or this choosing, churches became more homogenous. Like, they're like, this is us. Mm-hmm. And if you're not us, this is not us. And that's sad, because prior to the pandemic, like, I felt like we had a really broad spectrum and it narrowed. And it wasn't because we didn't want people. It was because decisions we made people say, oh, that's not me, I'm out. So churches are more similar now. The other thing I've noticed is politics has become, the person that said that about the sports is spot on. It's become winner take all. If you win, you get to mandate everything you want on the other side. I'll give a case in point. In Minnesota, where I'm at, the Democrats have a 1-vote majority in the Senate. Okay. And with that, they acted like they had a 90% Senate, not a 1 vote. And they mandated everything. And it was like winner take all. And the other side gets nothing. And we've lost the politics is a give and take. We're governing everybody, not just our beliefs. And that's why, even as a Christian, I would defend the right of Muslims to worship and Jewish people to worship, people to not worship. I'm going to defend everybody's right to worship as they see fit. I'm not going to mandate my thing. Yeah. And so, but it came winner take all. And you can see this evidence by the Supreme Court justices. If you think back to Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, okay, 2 highly controversial, like in today's age, their ideas would be highly controversial. They almost receive unanimous support from the Senate. And now you see a Senate vote on Supreme Court justices, like almost down party lines. Barely more than 52 people vote for the candidate, because you have to control the Senate, and it's winner take all. So we politicize the courts. It's winner take all. And then it's a demand, like a la carte is no longer part of politics. Like, I can't be a Republican and then have a varying view on taking care of the poor. And I can't be a Democrat and have a varying degree of, or view of abortion and say I'm pro-life. It's almost like it's all this, it's all that. And we've lost the a la carte. Like, why can't I be like, people ask me what I am, and I'm a registered independent. That's kind of a funny story. I didn't know independent was a party. Okay. And so when I went to register Republican or Democrat, I was like, you don't own me. I'm a registered independent. And I'm still part of the independent party, which is kind of funny. But I'm not changing it because I love being independent. But it's an all or nothing.
Yes.
And it's once we win, we get to force our way rather than graciously lead from a position of authority. And then, like, we won, if whatever your party would be, and then we graciously lead there, bringing in people, building consensus, finding middle ground, and we've lost that. So it has become an all, and then there's two types of churches now that I say two, then I take a three. There's those that are just ignoring it, like, we're not going to talk about it. Then there's those that are like, we are this. Yeah. And it could be we are a mega church, or it could be we are a Democrat church, and they exist. Trust me. Yeah. I was preaching in one church and in the inner city of Minneapolis, and everybody is using fans, and I look and they all said Harris, or they said Biden Harris, and I was like, they handed those out in church, like Biden Harris fans, So it's either one or the other. Right. And then there's those that are trying to say, hey, we're not declaring this is who we are. We're not ignoring it. We're trying to address this head on and say, wouldn't it be good if the church could be united? If the church, again, imagine if the church was not split between the parties and we all voted together, we'd be unstoppable.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever get back there?
I think there maybe has to be a collision and then a reset. I'd hope that, like, we could have an awakening so that we wouldn't have to do it, but I'm afraid there might have to be a collision. Like, let's be honest.
I feel like we've been in a lot of collisions. How big of a collision do we need? But I think you're right. I think like, because we paint people as the enemy, and people say if they win, it's the end of America. Well, no, it's not. Right. And both sides need to tone down the rhetoric. And we need to stop seeing each other as the enemy, but we see each other as people with opposing views. But I mean, I forgot when Trump won the first time, you forget there was civil unrest, there was rioting, there was violence. I mean, I remember the next day, it's not violence, but I walked into a coffee shop in Minneapolis and I was smiling. And this lady, the barista, looks at me and she goes, "Why are you smiling?" And I was like, I'll smile, like, and she's like, "Did you not see the election results?" And I was like, that has no bearing on my smile. And she's like, "Look at all this. Do you see how we feel?" And I was like, again, it has no, so it was like people were angry, depressed, they rioted, they protested. There were commercials on TV. Remember, there were celebrities saying to the electors, "You don't have to vote for this guy." That's where it all started. And then we have the protests with the second election where he loses, and January 6th, which was an embarrassment, which I don't call it an insurrection, I call it a riot, that those that went in the Capitol were wrong and should be punished for whatever rioting they did. It wasn't an insurrection in my mind, but people might even get mad about that. But, and then you look at what's happening now, and when Biden was inaugurated, they had fences around it. I mean, I think we're headed for, I don't know. People were saying, like, I'm scared to be around after the election. That shouldn't happen in America. No. We should be demanding peaceful, no rioting, like a new president, no rioting. Yeah. And I want to get into that, but beforehand, I think we're 17 days away from the election as you and I are sitting here recording this. What are some of the things that you would say to, and I don't want to alienate anybody, and I mean this, I know. Yeah. Our audience isn't all Christians. I know that. I know that sure. The reality is, there's going to be people listening to this, but as a pastor of a church, as a believer, what are we voting on? What would you say to somebody who's listening and going, okay, what's the main things that I should be thinking about as a voter and leading with my faith?
Sure. And that's a great question. And I told our church, we're not voting for pastor. And I said, none of the people that are running for president or vice president could qualify even to be an elder at our church. Okay. Let's set that clear. Okay. But we're actually voting for the policies that these people will enact, because ultimately the president is just a person, the vice president, just a person, but it's the power of their policies that last much longer. The presidency has started to do executive orders, which is like, those come and go with whoever's the next one. The next one can erase the executive orders, but the laws stick around. And so we're voting for the laws, we're voting for who gets on the courts, and we're voting for the policies. Years ago, the NAE, the National Association of Evangelicals, put out a list of things that should be on there that Christians should be concerned about. And I love that list. And it talked about we should be concerned about the sanctity of human life. From the moment of conception until someone takes their last breath on this earth, we should be concerned about the sanctity of life and say, what is going on there? We should be concerned about the marriage and just the value of marriage, which leads us to the gender ideology. These are things that we should be concerned about. And then the freedom to worship. Like, never forget, the people risked coming across the Atlantic Ocean on these tiny wooden ships to worship God freely, and anything that infringes upon that. And then you look into creation care, you look into poverty, and all these things should be things, and we should be weighing those out. And as we look at it, we weigh those. And for me, life, protecting the children, freedom of worship, those three are so heavy for me that the other ones are a matter of percentages. The others are all or nothing. And if I could say this, I had a chance to talk to Walter Kim, the president of the NAE. We had lunch, and there were about 6 of us at the table. And I said, what do you think is the current number one value? He goes, I'm not sure there is a number one. And I said, can I tell you why I think you're wrong? And he goes, sure. And I said, poverty is a matter of degrees. Does this party want to spend $2 billion and this want to spend $2.5 billion? It's $500 million. It's degrees. Abortion, it's all or nothing. You can't split the baby in half. Solomon was right. You can't do that. And I said, freedom of worship, you either allow it or you restrict it. It's not like, well, you sort of, I said, you either allow it or you restrict it. I said, gender ideology, it's either there are 2 genders or you're going to force me to lie against my conscience. I said, I think we've got some higher priority ones. So anyways, those are alienating things that people have varying different degrees of what they believe. But for me, those are the biggies. And I love that years ago they said that.
Yeah. So, the election comes and someone will be elected.
Yes.
That we know. Then what happens? What do we do if it goes in the way that let's just say individually I vote one way and that person gets elected? What do we do? And then what happens if I vote one way and that person doesn't get elected? What do we do?
Well, we're going to have to be peaceful citizens. I mean, the Bible says that we are peacemakers. It's part of our responsibility to be peacemakers. So we need to do that. We need to be good, responsible citizens, be as involved as we can be, look for opportunities to speak into this. Somebody asked me, would I advise President Trump or President Harris if I had the opportunity as a pastor? And I said, absolutely. I would advise any president, President Trump, President Harris, I would advise any president and give them advice. But we're going to have to be peaceful, and we're going to have to avoid social media, irresponsible behavior on social media. When you post things like a Bible verse that says, pray that his days will be short, or, right. That's terrible for the church to do. And then we're going to have to refrain from anything that is beyond peaceful protest. It's okay for peaceful protest, but anything beyond that is we cannot be part of that. We're going to have to tone down the rhetoric we're going to have to learn how to ask better questions. Like, instead of saying, well, this is what I believe, why do you believe that? And why do you think that's fair? And why do you think that's appropriate? Ask better questions. And then realize Jesus is still on the throne. No party is going to get you there. And when people say, what party are you behind? Again, I love that I'm independent. Sorry that it is a party, but people say, I'm not behind any party. The parties are behind me. I'm for Jesus. I'm for the cross. I'm for building the church. And I simply vote for whatever party I think will allow me to fulfill the mission. I'm looking behind me saying, which one's antagonizing me, which one's knocking me down, and which one's at least letting me run free. And I'm going to stay on mission. The church will be incredibly resilient no matter who wins. The ramifications on your children, your grandchildren, what the judges will do. I mean, 2 Supreme Court justices most likely will retire in the next term, Justice Thomas and Alito. So the court could change, man, and stay on mission. There's a saying in the military, Charlie Mike, continue mission. It's Charlie Mike. It's continue mission for God, and don't get trapped up into this. And can I say this? I've already talked so much, but I was in communist China. And I was praying with people that are part of the underground church. Okay. And there's millions, like hundreds of millions. Okay. And I asked them what we could pray for. And not one of them said, pray that communism will end, pray for a new leader, pray. None of them. And I'm like, you're all getting persecuted. Like, you're all underground. And they're like, pray that I know Christ and the fellowship of his sufferings. Pray that more people will come to know him. Pray. And they were almost like, yeah. Stay on mission. And I just was like, wow, incredible. They were so focused on mission. I think that's what we do. And so if your party wins, don't spike the ball and gloat. Yeah. And if your party loses, don't take your ball and go home. Stay engaged.
Yeah. I'm blanking on the comedian's name. I'll have to think about it. Maybe I'll put it in the liner notes or whatever. But that's essentially what he said. In South Africa, during a political season, people support whichever party, and then the election happens, and he goes, and then we reintegrate. We come back together and support whatever party won that election. And he goes, that's what I'm not seeing in America is the divide never comes back together. And I think that's so true. And I appreciate you saying, I think it's so obvious, but I appreciate you saying, like, be careful with social media. We weaponize these things that were really intended for us to connect and stay in touch with somebody I haven't seen in a long time. And now it's like, oh man, we just use these as the weapons that, get our voice out there, that it can be so harmful. And I see Christians doing it all the time. This is not non-Christians doing this or whatever. It's all people.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I was watching a podcast, and the guy was talking about social media gives people unearned social credit.
Amen.
And it gives them a platform. And if the algorithm hits, next thing you know, they're crazy ideas. We used to just share crazy ideas at the dinner table. And like at my dinner table growing up, you'd say something and my dad would look at you and say, that's stupid. Don't say that again. And you're like, okay, that's stupid. And, or your friends around the table in college, and you'd say something and they all go, no. And you got immediate feedback of that's outside the norm, and they would challenge you, and people had to earn their social credit. Now, if you own a smart device, you can be on social media and you have unearned social credit, and people, instead of saying that's a stupid idea, people rally around your stupid idea and reinforce it and endorse it. And then you think, yeah, I'm right. Instead of somebody going, nah, that's a stupid idea.
Yep. Well, and the other thing is we're learning that the social media platforms figure out your algorithm, and they continue to reinforce wherever you're at. And I know this for certain, the times where I'm like, how am I continuously getting the same ads? It just continuously beats whatever agenda you're into. It figures it out.
True.
and it reinforces your thinking.
True.
That unfortunately that shapes us then to go, oh, I am 100% accurate in, whatever it is I might be saying or thinking, and therefore, now I do have a platform to say that. And one of the things, and I'm sure you'll agree, if as believers we could just be kind, like I'm taking it down to the barest, how do we just be kind and show people love, people that we may not agree with, people that, I think that's the thing. It's like, can we do that? I've said this before. I may have said it on the podcast. I can't remember, but it's like, throughout history, God has brought people into our lives, whether it was lepers or whether it was, a different, identity or whatever it may be. Every generation has had a group of people. And I just feel like there's going to be a day we're all in the throne room with God, and God goes, you know what? Every time I brought you somebody that was hard to love, you just couldn't do it. You just couldn't figure out how to love that person. And it's like, I just wonder what that would be like going through this, political season where the emotions are high. You're starting to see the tensions. We've already had a couple assassination attempts already. It's like, what would happen? It's just like if we were just kind and just loved people that we maybe didn't agree with everything. And one more thing, I want to say this, and then I'll let you speak into it. When did it change that we have to agree with 100% of you? And if I don't, then that means I reject you. Like, we've gotten to this place where it's like, if you don't agree with 100% of me, you've rejected me, and now we are enemies. And I don't think I didn't grow up like that. I have dear friends that I'm still dear friends with, where I'm like, yeah, I love this dude, but we don't maybe agree in this area of life, but we can still be in relationship and still be friends, still hang out together, and our families get together, but we don't agree 100% on all of the topics. I think part of the issue.
Yeah, it's become that all or nothing. And if you disagree with me, then I have to all or nothing you. Yeah. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be, I'm able to love you. And I'll give you a case in point. A political leader met with me yesterday, and he's running for office, and he sits on a pro-life board for the pregnancy center that actually gave him life. Like, his mom went in there thinking about getting an abortion, and she changed her mind and gave him life. And so he said, as a grateful gesture, I want to serve as a lawyer. He's Harvard educated. And he said, I want to serve on your board. And the person running against him is like, he's on this board, this pro-life, and these are their beliefs. And he's like, listen, I don't align with all of the things they say, but they gave me life, and I'm trying to make them better, and I'm trying to serve. And it's like an all or nothing. When we attack someone, we criticize any alliance that they have. But when we're looking at our own self, we say, well, I eat the meat and spit out the bones, and I don't believe all that. They're good people. And so we judge which, by the way, I want to do a sermon on this about Jesus judging our intentions and motives. Well, like, God's like, I don't even judge your good behavior. I judge your motive behind it. How serious is that? But no, it's become all or nothing. And even when you see signs in people's yards, I saw a sign and I said, oh, they're voting for that person. I said, immediately I think, they're not very bright if they're voting for that person, And Becca said, well, when they would see a sign you put out, they might think you're not very bright. And I was like, yeah, forgive me for judging. Everybody has different. They're not my enemy. They're my neighbor. They're not my enemy. They're my neighbor.
That's right. I was on a walk not too long ago, and I saw a Trump Vance sign in a yard next to a Harris Waltz sign in the same yard. And I'm like, well, there's a house divided. I don't know if it was a husband and wife situation, but it was like they were arguing on the front lawn with their signs. But you mentioned all or nothing, and I want to say that studying psychology and having a master's in mental health, that is something we look at as, maladaptive behavior. It's like we're just operating out of all or nothing. And in psychology, when you study even CBT, you got a list of all of these cognitive distortions. All or nothing is on there as a cognitive distortion. Like it's not something like, as therapists, we help people move out of all or nothing thinking because it's so unhealthy. But we're living in a culture right now that is dominated by all or nothing thinking. Either you're 100% with me or you're against me. And we're just not human beings that operate that way. But we're living in a literal cognitive distortion that we train people to not do. But it's widely accepted now of, yeah, that's exactly how it should be.
America needs a revival and a therapist. We need to get out of this, but what's interesting? When I travel and I go to other countries, I was just in Ethiopia. I sat down with a bunch of leaders from Kenya and Ethiopia, and they said, "What is wrong with America? What is wrong? What is wrong?" And it was literally like they were looking at a marriage that was destructive, and they were like, "What is wrong? You guys need help. You need help." And it was crazy that they're looking and going, "You need help." And we do. We need help. We need to stop this. What is it? You just said it was a cognitive what?
Cognitive
distortion.
Yeah, cognitive distortion. There's a lot of them. There's a list of them, but all or nothing thinking is on there.
We need to eliminate that, but we also need revival. And then I felt this so strongly. You treat leaders and followers differently. And this is a teaching that I'm kind of working on right now. And I want to help everybody because it's like, he's too nice. He's too this. Okay, I am very nice. But I do notice that Jesus, when he spoke to the religious Pharisees, he was like, bam, 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 because they were the leaders leading people astray. Right. When he dealt with the people that were in deception, he was very kind. Like you're trapped in this. And I think we need to look, there's different ways. Like if I'm going to speak to a political leader that is doing things destructive to our society, I'm going to be a more bam than I am like, oh, I'm going to pray for you, love you. I have an opportunity to speak to a power that is pushing a platform that's destructive. And I'm going to be more Nathan the prophet, if you will, or John the Baptist calling out Herod. But then when you're dealing with people that are trapped in the sins of this world, I'm going to be more like there's a way out. There's a way out. And does that make sense?
I think the what I'm picturing is the difference between Jesus going into the temple and having a righteous anger because of what was transpiring and keeping people from experiencing God versus him sitting with the woman at the well and just seeing her and caring for her, knowing her, listening to her. Those are very, very different interactions that I think we can learn from. And
great point.
I think it's, I appreciate so much you spending time with me and talking about this stuff because it's so pertinent to everything that we're doing right now. It's like I can't get away from this stuff, regardless of where you go. So it's inevitable. And it's something that I think I appreciate you saying earlier. It's like, stay engaged. It is important. It does affect our children, our grandchildren, so on and so forth. And I think there's opportunities for us to overcome and allow Christ to be shown in the way that we treat others. And I do say this all the time, and I probably stole this from Dr. Henry Cloud, but God uses his people to help his people. We need to represent that. We don't want to push people deeper and further away from Christ because of the way we're representing Christ. And so, anything else you'd like to share with the audience around any of this? And just appreciate you.
Yeah, a couple things they might not know is pastors used to do sermons before the election and talk about the people and the values they should vote for. It's really new since the Johnson Amendment that they quieted the church. So if you say the church should be quiet, well, the church was always engaged before that. And the Johnson Amendment has kind of squelched it quite a bit. And then people accuse us of like the church is getting political. No, politics has become religious. And if you think about the issues that we're debating, we're not debating, what is our treaty? Like, do you realize hardly anybody's talking about Ukraine and hardly anybody's talking about Israel and Hezbollah and Hamas. That's not the key issue that we're like, what's bringing you to the ballot box? It's life or abortion. It's gender ideology. It's freedom of religion. It's those things are the things that are the top things that they're talking. So politics has become religious. And I tell everybody in our church, hey, it's in our book. I have an opinion on this. I have a belief on this because it's in our book, the Bible. That's what they're talking about. I don't have a deeply held opinion on drilling in the Arctic, but I have a deeply held belief of life or a deeply held belief of religion. And that's why it's so volatile right now. Politics is becoming religious and we have to be engaged. And if we're not, everybody else is. The church should be engaged.
Yeah, I know I've heard you say that before and maybe one of your sermons or podcasts that you've been on. And I think that's a good awareness for people to understand is that the church isn't becoming more political. It's the political climate's becoming more
very so
into those areas. That's really powerful. Pastor Rob, thank you so much. I just think the world of you and appreciate your time and your wisdom, especially, this is not easy stuff to talk about. And you were just like, when I sent you the email, you were like, yeah, of course I'd be happy to talk about that. It's like, let's talk about the most difficult things going on in the world right now. And you jumped at the opportunity. So I appreciate your heart and being a part of it. And again, the support that you guys bring to Emerge is incredible. And we think the world of you guys.
Thank you. It's my privilege, and anytime I'm ready to whatever topic, let's go.
Right. I'll figure out the next really hard topic that nobody wants to talk about, and I'll reach out to you.
Well, I'm ready.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you.
Well, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Pastor Rob for generously sharing his insights with us and engaging in a discussion that is pertinent to the topics in our culture currently. We are presented with an opportunity to extend care, kindness to those whom we may have disagreements with. When we are called to love our neighbors, it's also encompassing those who are challenging to love. I am keeping our country in my prayers, and I kindly request that you do the same. My hope is that we can navigate these next coming weeks with peace and kindness. Thank you for your continued support of our podcast. And I encourage you to check out Rob's new book, The Generous Life. Well, until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless.